Welcome everyone to the IFLA webinar featuring our guest Brent Trout. Um, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be. Just a little bit about Brent Trout, and then we will turn the time over to him. Please know that Brent will answer any and all questions at the end of his presentation. And you are welcome to put them in the Q&A. So let me tell you a little bit about my friend my friend Brent Trout. By the way, just for full disclosure, it is 7:03 in Utah. So it's pitch black outside and my brain might not be quite awake. I apologize. But Brent Trout is the manager of the Emerson History and Genealogy Center at St. Louis County Library, Clark Branch or Family Branch. Quite a mouthful. With a background in museums, Brent previously served as the executive director of museums in Oklahoma and Florida. If you ever have an opportunity to hear some of his museum stories, they are fantastic. His interest in genealogy developed while in Oklahoma, where he assisted several individuals with tribal enrollment. A dedicated public servant for most of his career, Brent has spent several years working in the professional genealogy field within libraries. He's passionate about helping others trace their family history and connections. In addition to his work with genealogy, Brent is also deeply committed to preservation efforts, having advocated for library to open space for digitizing and preserving family memories for future generations. And I turn the time over to Brent. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. And likewise, it is 7 in Salt Lake City. It is 8 o'clock here, and I come alive at 9 o'clock. So you're going to get the best of me at 8 o'clock right now. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start my presentation. All right. So we are going to talk about when I was asked to do this, I presented several options, and the folks selected the story of moving. So when I first joined the St. Louis County Library, wonderful place to work. I was not notified that we were going to move an entire collection several times, and you're going to hear some of the stories behind that, some of the motivations, some of the things you should think about if you ever undertake these things, and then I'm going to talk about some other issues. So let's go forth here. So just a little bit about me. You heard that wonderful AI generated bio that I did there. Next time I'm going to ask it to be more complicated so Sherry can have more fun saying it. So I'm the department manager of the St. Louis County Library Department of History and Genealogy. I am from O'Fallon, Missouri, which I have to say I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, because no one knows where O'Fallon is. So that's okay. And I do not have an MLS. I have a master's in history. So people are like, you got to have that to work in libraries, right? No, you don't. So I worked in the museum field for over a decade, and I joined the St. Louis County Library in 2022. So I'm just going to give a little disclaimer because I feel like these things are important. So I am telling you the story of how we did this giant move, and it's coming from me and it's coming from my perspective, but I cannot leave out the fact that about 50 people were involved in this move overall. And that's everyone from my wonderful staff to the staff of the general circulation branches to our administrators. So this was by no means a one Brent effort. This was a group effort. It really takes a village to move a library. So I also like to identify what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to give you a brief introduction to St. Louis County Library because I love the origin story of St. Louis County Library, and it allows me to share cool photos. And then I'm going to talk about special collections, which is my department that eventually becomes history and genealogy. I'm going to go through moving out, new services, moving in, service summaries and statistics, and then memory lab use and impact. And I'm going to run through some of these fairly fast because, we have an hour, but definitely questions at the end here. So if you have never been to St. Louis or have no idea about St. Louis, so St. Louis is unique in that back in the 1800s, we decided to have a great divorce and the county and the city actually officially split. So it was at the point where the people in the city where the wealth was located. And St. Louis has always had an interesting, rivalry with Chicago and other towns being the fourth city. So the city felt that the county was dragging the city down, and they didn't want to pay for all those country folk, as they called them back then. And so there was really no library service for people in the county until we came along in the 60s. And so, oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke, in the late 40s. So the way our library service actually started was bookmobiles. We actually did not have physical branches. We had bookmobiles first and primarily because the county was so spread out and just remote. So you can actually see our fleet of bookmobiles there, which I think is wonderful to see. And so we opened in 1947. We quickly followed, once that success went off, we quickly followed with two branch locations in heavy populated areas of North County, which is where a lot of settlement was happening post-World War II. And then by the 60s, we saw the establishment of several other branches, including a headquarters building, and that's the building I'll be talking about that we moved out of. That was basically dying as we were moving out of it. And so today we serve over 524 square miles of the county. So that's huge. We have 20 total branches, and our whole system receives anywhere between 300 to 500,000 visits per month. So it's pretty decent. So to learn about this move, we have to talk about headquarters. So it was built in 1960, expanded multiple times. So the footprint grew over time as services were added. Our administration was also located there, and it was demolished in 2022. And I included these photos here because one is straight from the 1980s, if you can't tell by the dresses. And then the other is actually semi-recent. So just to show you how dated that place was. So my department, special collections, this is actually not that old of a photo. So it really looked like that, looked like a hospital to me. So you can see the collection there and the legacy equipment for reading microfilm. So long story short on this, we had a local society at St. Louis Genealogical Society. They lost their space where they were hosting their library. And so they went to our board, and the board approved that, as well as a collection from the St. Louis Numismatic Society, which I have no idea what happened to that. I would love it if we still have that. And so our library establishes the Special Collection Department in 1997, and it starts displaying the items on Tier 4. So we were a 5-floor building. We were on the 4th floor. So by 1998, we actually have the official grand opening. Everything's going well. The biggest thing for us back then, and this was just kind of a propelling motion of events, we started hosting the National Genealogical Society. So without going too in detail on their organization, it is an organization that is the National United States Society for Genealogy Research. They had a large library and they needed somewhere to put it, so they transferred it all to us. And you can see the van line there. And that was actually Anne Fleming there. If you do genealogy, you might be familiar with her. She is like the St. Louis genealogist. She's epic. So I also just want to mention, while I mentioned those collections, that we have several other valuable collections for researchers. The Giesecke collection, the Julius K. Hunter and Friends, Polish American Society, Mary Berthold, Jewish Genealogical Society collection, tons of collections. Genealogy is our game. So we're a unique department. We're a library within a library, and there's been several times that we've actually attempted to move, or the administration wanted us to move. And so we even fundraised a great deal of money at one point, and every time that we would go to move somewhere, something would fall through. Either the building would not actually come to fruition, the land would be transferred back to the owner. Lots of failed moves there. So 2022, it was announced that finally our new home was going to be the Clark family. So before I can start going into some of the logistics of moving, I just want to talk about my philosophy of leadership. So I am the complete opposite of a micromanager, and I think my staff really loves the fact of that. I believe that I hire good and talented people to do good and talented things, so I let them do things. And I also think that mistakes are going to happen, and problems will arise, but you have to plan for those. Good planning will mitigate the damages from those things. And I also just operate off a general philosophy that there are emergencies that happen in a library, but there are no library emergencies. So especially in genealogy, as I always say, those people are going to be dead tomorrow. So, let's do what we can do. I think that saying, "Don't let perfect be the enemy of good," is a really good thing. So just a general summary of when we're moving out, we have 220,000 volumes of books, and we have 120,000 reels of microfilm and countless other items. And so I was working with our administration to find climate controlled storage, and due to the length of the possible construction, so this is post COVID, still kind of lingering COVID, supply chain was still not fixed. So they thought since the construction could take years, we needed to find another solution on where to store these items. So the first thing we had to do was, before we started moving items, start weeding. And if you run a genealogy program at your library or department, you know that you probably have never weeded, or you rarely weed. It's a huge thing, and it actually kind of shook a lot of our stakeholders. People who do genealogy on average tend to be on the older age, the older end of the spectrum. And so the idea of getting rid of anything is just insane. And why rely on these digital things? One day the internet could just disappear. So we started weeding. And so that process basically is an ad for Family Search. So Sherry gives me no money, by the way. So we go through and we actually figure out, hey, do we have multiple copies of an item? Do we need multiple copies of an item? So we started actually taking down a lot of our circulation items, because we have a lookup service that's free that we operate that gets a lot of traffic. So like, we don't need to circulate a book for someone to look up 2 or 3 names in it when we could just provide that remotely. Did Family Search have the item? So if they had the item with no restrictions, we were going to go ahead and delete the item. And we did that with about 58,000 reels of microfilm. And then we had another criteria, was if the item was digitized, was it so rare that was only in 1 or 2 places? So that kind of gave us an idea of what we were going to look for as far as what we were keeping. So obviously I went into history because I didn't really like math. So math was very fun for me. I can get along, but this was pre Chat GPT being really good at math. So how do you start moving a collection? And you got to figure out how much of a collection you have. So we started using the numbers of how big the shelf, how wide the shelves were, how many bays, how many sides. And we had to get the linear feet of the total collection so we could break it down into where we were storing it, so that we could make sure the locations had it. And I know that just sounded like a weird chain of events, but it really works out. And ironically, for our collection, we discovered 2.1 inches is the average size of our genealogy books. So, useless knowledge. I don't even know that'll win a pub trivia one time. So once we had the estimate of the total collection size and the uncatalogued material, we had to start looking for the locations within the system where we could store these things. So we ended up storing our items in 5 different locations at 3 different physical structures. So you can see here just kind of a breakdown of what we were looking at as far as how we were going to do things. And so our library believes in not cutting services. We do not delay services. So while this is all going on and all these items are in storage, we still had to offer the public some kind of service. So that required a lot of thinking about what would be available, what would be, closed stacks. So we came to the conclusion that our priorities, and I will tell you actually in hindsight, while this seems logical, probably should have done something different. So have our St. Louis materials available. We felt that people would be traveling here, people who live here would want the St. Louis materials. And then maintain circulation of the NGS collection, the National Genealogical Society collection. So that's an agreement that we have with the NGS, that we circulate their material. It's really cool. Almost all of their items are circulate, so that's something available for the whole country. And then the one thing that I would always say, that no matter what we had in storage or what we left behind, we still had our most valuable asset, which is our staff. So the combined years of genealogy, reference research, and all those things, it was enormous. So we may not have had the sources, but we knew how to find the sources and do the methodology for patrons. So by the way, when I say St. Louis was great to keep, but we had more people ask for Tennessee than St. Louis for some random reason. So since our move out required us to take it to 3 physical locations and 5 different places within these 3 locations, we had to see how the collection would load out. And so we didn't want any possible gaps. If the collection gets out of order at one point, it's just going to get out of order at every point. Also knowing that whatever effort we put in on the move out is going to pay off on the move in. So basically it's a nightmare. I mean, we had to do our best project management hats. I had to split my staff into 3 different teams, a receiving team, and then 2 on-site teams who were loading things in a particular order. So the goal of leadership in my eyes is to remove barriers, and it's also to make things as easy as possible. So find the solutions and look at the risk register, look at what the possible risks are with doing any kind of project, something like this. So the idea was that we had enough prep time in this case. We were going to pre-measure the entire collection and divide it into carts. So you can see here, we contacted the provider for moving and said, what kind of carts are you going to use? They sent us the dimensions, the actual link where they buy the carts. And we went through, figured out the linear feet on the carts, and then actually went through the shelves to figure out which each section would be, and then numbered that cart. So, and by the way, if you're ever wondering who the perfect people to do this are, it's your catalogers. To be a cataloger, you have to be so meticulous that this was like I love matching people to what they like to do and what their skill set lets them do. They dominated this task. So here's just kind of an example of how this looked. You can, by the way, we had 360 cards total, so it was a long process. With the pre-measurement going on, they would actually insert that slip in the beginning of the card. You would pull that off and know that was your card loaded up, and then you would highlight the location it was going in. So you can see here, side A, 121, Beck storage, which is one of the storage rooms where we were sending things in. So had we not done the pre-measure, this would not have allowed us to have volunteers help with this process. We have of course, everybody who works at the library knows Dewey Decimal, but our collection is arranged a little modification of Dewey. So this basically kept most of our things in order, and I highly recommend consider something like this if you ever undertake this kind of mass undertaking. I also just like sharing spreadsheets of dread. So this was basically our spreadsheet that we lived by every day. And it, not going through and describing all the stuff, but we weren't the only ones moving as well. So we had other departments moving within the building, but we had a number of carts that we had to do every day, or else we weren't going to make it. And you can see the number of optimal staff where I had to have people at, and that just creates a whole bunch of different issues as well. So I will say that maintaining morale was an interesting scenario in this. It's staff, all of my staff are librarians, so they're not used to doing, massive physical labor. And that's what this was. It was loading books all day long. It also required a coordination with the moving company. So I think our administration, I think some people forgot that, they weren't going to be there for us all day long. They have other business to do. So if we didn't meet a deadline and the moving company was there, they're not going to wait for us. So that required making sure we were there. Also, the moving companies are unpredictable. They may have a job end earlier, so they get somewhere 25 minutes ahead of time. And if you're not prepared the night before, you could have some issues there. And so one thing I also want to say is that while this is going on, the building that we were in that we knew we had to replace, that we eventually demolished and we're now in the footprint, it started breaking down drastically. So as you can see here, the air conditioner broke. So it was, and this is not even the highest, it was 97 degrees in that building at one point. It actually got up to 99. And at that point, that's when I actually start sending my staff to the other locations, and I maintain loading these by myself because I didn't want my staff to have to go through this. Also, it's the only time in my history of my career where HR has approved me to wear swim trunks to work. So I was very comfortable. And then you can also see that those carts, when you load genealogy materials on there, they get heavy. And so you are pushing 900-pound carts around, especially on nice carpet. We actually broke through a section of the floor with one of them. It was great. It was good fun. We had to figure out how to get that out of the hole. Here's just an overview of one day's shipment, what it would look like. So since we were on tier 4 and tier 5, we would have to constantly move things downward in a orderly manner. And this is an aerial view of one day's shipment. So one day's shipment was 25, 26 cards, by the way. So you had to meet your 25, 26 goal to end your day there. And yeah, it was fun. So after 31 days, it took 31 days. This is what I learned, that the best laid plans of mice men will always have problems. and that you should always be flexible. And I think this is my actual personal motto, it's my professional motto. Just be flexible. What can you do? Can you roll with the punches? And please, don't do these in summer, especially in old buildings. It's a funny story that I tell about this is that I had a physical for the library right after this. And I actually got flagged on my physical because my potassium was so low that they were concerned about me and I had to go to my doctor. And the basic question was, do you like to do saunas a lot? And I said, no, just 97 degrees, 98 degrees in the workspace. Oh, so I actually had to start drinking some potassium supplements, which was fun. Didn't die though. So we were a department in exile. That's what I always like to tell people. And one of the reasons why we may have moved, but we wouldn't shut down is that I have discovered, and still to this day, so this was a long time ago, people still think that we're at the old location where we were moved to. So we were moved to a neighborhood branch out in Ellisville, Missouri, for those wondering. And this was an ideal situation for us, especially with introducing new services. So our in-person numbers just tanked, but our lookup service just went above and beyond. So people realizing that we were still around, still available, but not viewable in person, they were contacting us to do lookup requests for them, remote genealogy sessions, everything that we could do. And since we didn't have that in-person traffic, it really allowed us to do 2 years of just department planning, outreach, program development, all sorts of fun things. And that's when we got to really test things out and introduce new services. So coming from the preservation side of history field, I knew I wanted to help people preserve their items. I used to give classes about this. I used to have little seminars for people in the communities where I live. Most people do not know how to preserve their family valuables. They don't know how to preserve them environmentally. They don't know how to just digitize them and when to digitize them and how to. So I knew I wanted a memory lab, and this is also another ad for Family Search. Family Search had developed one, and I liked what they were doing with it. So the idea is that we wanted to do something similar, and I knew that our patrons would respond well to it. So also a mobile memory lab. So a miniature scaled down version of an actual memory lab that we have in the department that we can take around the system and not only use it as outreach for the department and for the memory lab itself, but give people who can't make it to Clark Family, the central location, an opportunity to do the same thing. Also introduce preservation kits. So realizing that all of those things wouldn't work out, I wanted to make ways that you could do oral history at home, that you could scan things at home. So we actually have kits that allow you to do these things. And then we also, by the way, like my review after this, they're like, you did a lot of stuff that year. So digital archives, we ended up having 1,000 yearbooks digitized and didn't know what to do with them. So we decided to build a digital archive, and I'll expand more on why we went that route as well. And then we also knew we wanted to create a center to record oral history. So the easiest way to record history is by talking. So it's very daunting for folks to write books. It's very easy to talk to humans, or even talk to yourself. So with knowing what I wanted to do, my administration was very supportive in me going around the country, kind of taking a look at what other people were doing. So we knew that there was a nationwide initiative for memory labs. We knew that Family Search had developed one, but then we had some other ones throughout the country that had started springing up. And there really seemed to be a divide between the way the services operated. So there's a DIY, a do-it-yourself, and by meaning do-it-yourself, you don't really get any assistance other than what's printed on a piece of paper. And then there's do it with somebody else. And so Family Search has a model where there is somebody with you the entire time. So, we kind of we discussed that we wanted to be in between that. So Washington, D.C.'s public library has initialized a standardized memory lab thing, and I think it's great. Looked at it. We borrowed some things from their policies, but it didn't always fit our needs. Family Search just has more volunteers than we do, just by merit of the organization. And so we wanted to find something that would support us and our staff, because I couldn't afford having staff be on the memory lab all day, every day. And that's kind of where we landed at. So while we're doing all these fun things and developing these kits, we just get the notice from the paper like everybody else that, hey, July 9th is when you're going to open. And so you can see the date was April 23rd. So that's when we realized we really had to prepare for these things. So we're moving again. So we go back to the phase one. Phase one, we got to weed again. So what's been digitized over the course of 2 years? Lots of things. So we discovered at least 1,600 digitized items that we could have gotten rid of. And then we further reduced our circulating items. More things didn't need to be. Things were less rare at this point, or we just wanted to redirect them into lookup. So we removed about 3,000 items, which of the 220 or 300,000 that we had, that's not a significant amount, but that's several carts. So that at least helps us. So our move out process was pretty flexible. Basically the only deadlines were associated with getting the things out of the building so that they could be auctioned off. So anything that we didn't want auctioned off needed to be out by a certain date. And auctioneers were so with the preview periods and all this, we had a lot of flexibility. The move-in period was not flexible at all. Our library does not want to open with half services. So we took 31 days to move out. My administration came to me and said, can you do this in 30 days? Now keep in mind, like moving out is always going to be easier because you're taking books and just loading them. The reverse of that is that you have to think about how you're placing these, how the layout's going to look. So they basically asked, can I do it? And I'm stubborn enough to say, sure, of course. Yeah, we'll get it done. So of course we have another spreadsheet, and whereas 25, 26 was the goal previously, now 32 to 50 was the goal every day. And so we had to have multiple teams. But in this case, it actually required loading in order. So we had those 3 different locations. We had to determine where at of the 5 physical locations in the 3 buildings, each collection was and where it would go. So, and that required communicating with multiple teams, making sure staff knew what team they were on. So we didn't want someone having to do the same work all the time. So we'd rotate weekly, kind of what team you got to be on. And that's a massive spreadsheet of scheduling alone. So we took the layout here and we figured out how we were going to color code the collection, where things should go. And this served as the guideline for when we were loading in, like yellow is periodicals. Is it a periodical? It's going right there. Is it a yearbook? Yearbooks are green. It goes right there. So by measuring once again and having that idea of how much space we have and how much space the shelves were providing us, we were able to simplify the process immensely. But wait, there's more. So here's the first view of the new shelves that we got. We have compact shelving, by the way. So in order for us, instead of being on multiple floors, we're on one floor at the Clark Family Branch. We use compact shelving that is electronically powered to help us kind of condense all that stuff. What you may not see in this is that the dimensions on this should be 13 inches. So 13 inches for genealogy sources is optimal. A lot of, it's not a world where all books are the same size. A lot of our stuff goes higher than an average book. The shelving we got was about 10.5 inches. So we actually ended up, while we were supposed to get 7 shelves, because of the sizing on this, we ended up only having 6, which meant all of our measurements were for nothing at that point. So as we're loading in, we are redirecting and recolor coding the collection and have to every day make sure we're in the right area and plan for gaps. So the move-in was completed in 28 days, and it should have taken, for all intents and purposes, like 50, but we were able to make it work in 28 days because we were working day and night, weekends. We had people coming on that were volunteers to assist us with this. And the only way we would have gotten this done, it had to be for just pre-planning, weeding, knowing the collection so well to know where things need to go, and thinking in the beginning, we're going to load into these storage facilities the way we want the collection to come out, so that the beginning of the collection is the last thing that we put in. So the building opened to the public July 9th, and we are now called the Emerson History and Genealogy Center. But of course, it was fun. So right before the grand opening, Emerson, huge power company, was going to leave their headquarters in St. Louis. And so that was a whole ordeal. Were we going to be named after a company that left St. Louis and then 800 people were out of a job? That was not really good public relations. So we got really lucky. Emerson decided to stay, and I didn't have to think, what were we going to call ourselves this time? So I do want to highlight this was our grand opening time here. And this is me at the grand opening. It was great. I was having a great time. It's like, hey, look, fruits of the labors. And I got, before they actually opened to the public, I got called away because the
So
shelving broke.
shelf P, when shelf P is against.
And so
shelf
I don't think I
Q,
turned audio
that's
on,
not
but I'm
true.
basically describing the problem here that the shelving wouldn't move. So
No problem.
I am in there in my grand opening vest with my daughter, and we're having to fix shelving before the public gets in and sees it. And so there's always fun in libraries. Remember, there are no library emergencies. All right, so describing the memory lab. So if you haven't been to a memory lab, you have to have some standardization of equipment that allows people to view things. See how that jumped? So we picked out equipment over the course of those 2 years that we were in exile, and we tested it. We digitized. We tried to break the equipment. We wanted to see what was worthwhile, what would last the longest, so that we can make sure that we bought a stockpile of things. We wrote guides. We rewrote them. Have to give a lot of credit to my 8-year-old daughter. I had her actually digitize using our guides, and I'm like, if my 8-year-old can do it, our 80-year-old patrons can do it, and they can. It's great. So, and of course, we provide assistance at the same time. But you can see a glimpse here of just one of our stations. We have 3 stations total for digitization. We have 1 station for oral history, and I will show you stats later. But this became a huge, huge thing that still continues to grow to this day. And so VHS, cassette tape, negatives, mini DV, reel-to-reel photographs, so much more. And we also run consistent program to educate people about this, how to do this, and then we do outreach with it as well. And so people get it for 2 hours at a time. They can have 2 appointments per week. Of course, we know we're not too, if it's open, it's open. We also developed these kits here. So you can see my oral history kit and then my scanning kit. So we give patrons everything they need to do to scan photos, and we give them instructions to get them archival quality. And these portable scanners are just some of the best things. And they even get a computer with it that they can use for 21 days to digitize. And these are always out of my office. We never actually see any of them just hanging out. And so we've introduced this whole thing of like doing oral histories with us. We're actually in the process of putting call to actions out to get people to actually document their history with us. So, tell us about your first time at a St. Louis County library. Just tell us about your first time in a library. So then we constructed this digital archives. So this is all happening at the same time while we're in exile. We get a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. We start shopping digital archives. We knew what we wanted out of a digital archive. We knew that most people hated content DM, so we didn't want to go there. So we had 1,000 yearbooks, like I said. What we wanted to put them online and available. And this was really before Family Search was like pushing yearbooks. So had that probably happened, maybe we wouldn't have done this. But also, it gave me the opportunity to kind of break the law, but not in a bad way. So, uh, in the United States, we have Section 108 copyright exemptions for libraries and archives. And I really, so I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not giving you any legal advice. I started interpreting the law and started really researching this. I started going to copyright classes and discovering that as a library, if something's rare, if something you can't get on market value easily, you can digitize it and display it on premise. So my notion of that, to me, that meant I can digitize most of our rare genealogy books because they are in fact not easily available in the market. A lot of these family histories, people wrote 20 of them. So I can digitize those, and then I can put them on the digital archive. And there's a setting on our digital archive that we had custom installed that only allows you to view it at branches. So we have 20 branches. I've now created a system where people can come to any of our branches and see a lot of rare material that they couldn't beforehand. And then likewise, we're digitizing the items. So one day they will become available. We'll have it available to put online. So I worked with our legal team. The legal team defined premise as the entire system. It's fantastic. This is huge for us. And I think playing with these copyright exemptions has been great. And, you should look into see if you have similar exemptions in your country. So this is a little glimpse. It has now been much more polished since this screenshot was taken, but we have city county directories there, yearbooks. So there was a Supreme Court case in the United States about A to Z list. And this is something that we discovered that, I mean, yes, there's some creative elements to county directories and city directories, but a lot of it's just alphabetical order stuff. And so we're really playing on the law here. And I have a very good administration that will help me and support me in this. So we're displaying a lot of county directories and city directories that most people aren't displaying. Yearbooks, we also have a good policy on that. We protect the privacy of students. And then we also started getting some newspapers, local area newspapers that either the state didn't want to digitize or the city itself thought it wasn't worth digitizing. So we're serving as a key focal point for these things that you can't find anywhere else. And then, of course, atlases. So we have plat atlases, we have plat maps, we have county directories or map directories. We're putting them on there where else they wouldn't go anywhere else. And so this, and if you've used Family Search with their new AI search, it's similar to this. Everything is getting OCR'd, and then a layer of AI is running through it and allowing you to search our yearbooks. And so you could search my last name Trout and actually find my Uncle Pee Wee in this photo right there. So it's super powerful, and it just changes the game on directories for us. So no longer do we have to go out and look through all the directories on the floor. We can just type in the address, the name. Even if we wanted to do like a profession and then have the outputs run to AI, so we could do like a statistical breakdown of professions in St. Louis. So just to start going over some stats and showing you like the impact that we've made with these services. Since opening the digital archive, and we really don't promote this, we've had 7,000 visitors since opening it in April, which is huge. The way that I always phrase it is that that's 7,000 people who came in the department just from home. 150,000 items were accessed, and every month we're getting an organic 10% growth in these numbers. So it just keeps going and going. And one day we will promote it heavily, but right now we're just getting more and more material so people have something to get lost into. So for us, like opening a brand new state-of-the-art facility, so the Clark Family Branch, it's not just us, even though I want to be. So we have the creative lab. We have a place where you can come in and print artwork, where you can do 3D printing. You can check out instruments and record a record. You can do a movie recording, video games, whatever you want to do. Then we also have a small business center. We have an 850 person event center. We have Zoom rooms. We have virtual meeting spaces. This is huge. So a lot of people are walking in the door of the branch and just wanting to see what services are available. And that's when they discovered genealogy. So our department visitation was typically about, and this is pre-COVID, 9,000 yearly. We had a spike here and there for a conference in town. Our 5 months, 45,000 people. That's 45,000 people that we've helped. It's insane. So yearly, we would get about 24,000 reference transactions on a good year. 5 months, we've had 21,000. The numbers just continue to grow. And so the memory lab of its open hours, it's at 70% capacity. So 70% of the time that it's open, it is filled, not just with one person, it is filled. So the numbers are just amazing. And we get feedback from all of the patrons. We actually supply them a survey. And typically, since they're in there for hours at a time, they feel justified in doing the survey. So we have 3 scanners that have now reported over 1 million photos scanned since opening in July. And these are not the only scanners. We've got a count on our 8mm digitizers, 850 films. So we were able to use some local estimates. So we have companies that do it locally. Just between the films and the VHS, $800,000 has been saved for patrons. And that's not counting photos, cassette tapes, mini DVs, those things. So huge numbers. And there's also some outcomes associated with this. So part of my survey is I want to see how you interpret family history, genealogy, and how you feel, what does the memory lab do to this? So we know that if you know your family history, and this is verified through multiple studies, if you know your family history and you share your family history with your family, you are building more resilient families. So, and just think about it, it makes sense. Like you know, the stereotypical story, like, I walked uphill both ways to school or whatever. And so you think, oh, my grandparents walked uphill both ways, and I'm complaining about walking on flat ground. So we've discovered that 80% of the people in the lab are reflecting on their family history from digitizing it. You know, makes sense, right? And that 80% want to do family history or their interest is renewed. And then 100% are going to come back to our department. So this is just great. So by offering a service that's practical and it allows people to do things, and by the way, we didn't spend a whole lot of money on building this system. It's just become something outrageous. And so the response has been so good that they actually want us to establish more memory labs across the system, and somehow that will fall under my purview. Um, I just think it's a wonderful service. So if you're out there, please advocate for that if you don't have one in your system. So that's pretty much my program there. I'm going to start doing some questions there. Here's my contact information. So if you ever want advice on, I can give you bad advice on like what teams to root for. I can give you good advice about, you know, how to survive a large department move, genealogy assistance, if any of those fun things, you can contact me. If you ever need anything from our department, feel free to contact us there. If you're curious about the sources that we have, you can always visit us, slcl.org, and learn more about our department. If you ever just want to chat about the memory lab or see what the equipment that we have located in there and what we think about it, I'm happy to provide references and all these fun things. And, you know, and likewise, I have to give credit to Sherry and the crew at Family Search. They are always a great resource. You can always reach out and say, hey, what do you feel about this? Or how are you finding this working out? And in fact, one of the huge things that we had to figure out with the memory lab was how we were going to schedule appointments. And so Family Search gave us a lot of different varieties there, and we went with something different, but it allowed us to really think about some options here. So looking at the question and answer here, the electronic high density shelving, is that out on the public floor or closed stacks? How much of your collection is open stacks? How much of your collection is in archival climate controlled storage? So those shelves are on the public, and personally I think that's brave of our organization. Now I do have, so you know, genealogists can be very competitive. I do have a couple of DARs who are rivals, and so they have actually tried to shut each other in the stacks. But they have crush sensors, so they won't crush you. So we actually had to make instructional videos on how to operate these electronic shelving. And by the way, OpenStax, everything is OpenStax now. This is so Sherry hears me talk about this all the time. I'm a huge person. I don't want anything that's not available to the public. I want all information to be accessible and free, and that's how I live my life. So everything is out there. We do have an archive room that is actually for some of the rare items, and I would say maybe 5% of our collections in the archive room. And this is typically like we have a lot of genealogy sources from the 1600s, 1700s, and they go into a special climate controlled area. Can I explain more about the yearbooks? Am I restricting which years are available to view in the digital archive? Oh, love our newsletter. I love this. So, so yearbook wise, we made the cutoff at 2018, and we continue to roll a new year each year there. But legally, so in the United States, after 1988, you do need to have permission from the school or publisher to put yearbooks online. So which we have found is actually very easy to obtain. Most schools have understaffed librarians who don't have the time to answer all of these alumnus emails about, hey, can you send me a scan of this? So we just tell them that, hey, we're digitizing all of your yearbooks. We're going to put them online. We're going to take this away. And then we tell them what our restrictions are. So 2018 and older. And then we continue to roll years out as years roll on. So we have discovered that not only do we get the permission, but then the schools go, well, we're just going to send you yearbooks every year. And we love that. So that just takes the effort out of us right there. So yeah. And so anything after 2018, we have it available for cataloging, and then that also gets rolled on the shelf. So we don't just put recent yearbooks out there. We there's this thing, a concept called the right to be forgotten, and we respect that. Also, likewise, we do redact yearbooks if someone requests us to redact it. And then one thing I will add on to the yearbook, occasionally we do have people that will request, hey, I want to donate this yearbook. Please don't digitize these notes from people because they're racy notes. And we go, we definitely will leave this out so people don't need to see 50 years ago that somebody really liked you. Good question here. That is a lot of change in a short period of time. How did the staff morale fare over the course of the project? So basically like this, up and down. So the doing something completely different in the beginning was fun. So, we made fun of it. We did these things where it's library stuff. I made a form and you could submit your favorite songs and I would make playlists. So we would play jams kind of like, and that we allowed us to learn a lot about each other. Like, man, this person really likes some obscure Peruvian folk music, or this person really likes Elvis. So that really was a nice way for us to get to know each other. But then, as you're just doing the same thing every day. And and by the way, like it's getting on your knees, it's climbing a ladder. We had to triple stack things in storage. So it was like playing Jenga all day long. And I got to tell you, I can only play Jenga for like 45 minutes until I just lose interest. So it started dipping near the end of the process. And I had to let people take their time. I was very flexible that if you can get the work done, leave a little bit early, take a day off. We can always find some other measurements. And, I worked harder than I normally would have. I mean, I always give 100%, but I gave 250% because I wanted to make sure that my staff was, that they didn't think anybody was leaving anything behind. So, and then, being in exile, going from having all of your collection available to having almost none of your collection available, it really forced the staff to think of how to help people in different ways. And so some of our staff who may have not felt as comfortable with digital items, with 100% with family search or knowing what's on family search, internet was the only way we could really find a lot of sources, and family search. So they started using family search in a different way. So it really improved their skills, and really now, whereas their first kind of course of action was, hey, where's a book for this genealogy thing? Their first course of action now is like, is it online? So we go online and then we go to the print book. So yeah, so I could go on and on about how the morale was. The moving in morale was a little different because of the just pressure of getting it open in time. And of course, instead of working in a building that was being torn down, we were working in a building that was being built. So we had to wear hard hats. We had times when lights would go off. We had a time when fire marshal kicked us out. I mean, we're cool librarians. We've been kicked out of a library. So it's so cool. So yeah, it's the one thing is I always wanted them to know that I supported them and that, if they needed an hour, if they needed a day off, they needed several days off, we were there. Question. Do we also partner with local museums? Yes. So one really cool thing about St. Louis is that we have the St. Louis area regional history organization. So we digitize things for them. We have family search book scanners on site, and they will also digitize things for them. So we're constantly building that network, and we want people to know that it's expensive to host things online. Content management systems are not cheap. We pay a good amount of money every year to have this digital archive. We'll host it for free if it's something that falls in the scope. So we got you. What piece of equipment format types in the memory lab are the most popular and high demand? Well, have you know that I survey people, and I will tell you that VHS, number one, 8mm. And this is a complete outside of, okay, so photos, of course, like photos are a different animal. But as far as non-photos, VHS, 8mm, and then I never would have thought this, cassette tape. So that is the third. Now keep in mind, I am not the copyright police. So we have a copyright thing. How many cassette tapes are we really transferring that are probably created by family? I don't know. But funny story. I'm proud to say that the first thing digitized in the memory lab was the movie Dave with Kevin Kline. I don't know why. It's on YouTube for free. But this person, and they messed it up twice. So this person was so dedicated that they digitized the movie Dave 3 times. And I mean, if you don't remember that movie, it's where I once caught a fish this big. Go home and watch it. Trust me, you'll love it. Kevin Kline's American Treasure. All right. Any
Hey,
other?
Brent, I do. I have another question that ended up in the chat from my friend Dragon. He said, regarding oral history, I saw audio equipment. What about or video recording?
Ooh, good
Thank you in
question.
advance. Yeah.
So we do have audio equipment in the memory lab, the section of the memory lab dedicated to oral history. So we decided less is better, keep it simple. We actually custom programmed a program that works with a giant touchscreen monitor that you can record in video or you can record just audio. And so we give people that option there. We don't invest a lot. So it records in 1080p. It's a decent recording system. We did not invest a lot in camcorders or anything to record oral history that way, but we have discovered that people are loving the video aspect of it. So that's something we might look into in the future, but the system we have right now, and I promise you, this is so like lo-fi and it's so affordable. Webcams are it's a webcam. It's a glorified webcam, and it's so good at recording things right now that I don't know if we would switch over to something more sophisticated at this point, especially knowing that how libraries are used and how people can be rough with things.
Oh, yes. Another question popped up. Can you ballpark the cost for one of your memory stations?
So the biggest thing about the memory stations, to me, is the VCRs. So the last VCR was made in 2016, I believe. Now on my days off, I go to thrift stores and to Goodwills and I buy VCRs. So I'm sure the community thinks that I'm an insane person, or that I just really love cassette tapes. So usually I can get a VCR for 20 to $25, but you got to make sure that they work. And back when I was young, there was always like cardboard signs on the side of the road that said VCR repair. Those people don't exist anymore. So to answer your question directly, though, between all the pieces of equipment and the computer that we put in there, I'd roughly say it's about $5,000, and that's being slightly generous. So one thing that we made sure is that every piece of equipment is identical for the stations and that every station has backup equipment so that we don't have to disrupt service. So if something breaks down on us. And I actually spoke with Family Search about this extensively, like what did they see breaking down? Because they have their memory lab is larger than ours. And they told me, ironically, it was the scanners. Like the scanners are the things breaking down the most. And so I'm knocking on whatever fake wood that's in my office, but we have not had any major breakages and the amount of use. So I'm surprised. So I would say $5,000 will get you there. But if you're ever pitching this to someone, you can get a grant for this. You should be able to. Uh, just the amount of, and I'd be happy to share our survey results. Like everybody's happy, no major negative feedback. Usually the negative feedback's like, I wish I could stay for 8 hours at a time. It's like, we're so sorry, you have to share. But you know, I
It's
think
healthy to get up and eat something
yeah,
and
well,
move. Yeah.
yeah, and then we always have people like, what should I do while I'm in there? I'm like, I don't know, you're in a library. We have 300,000 books here. Oh, grab one. So, yes. So does anybody else have any other questions?
I actually had a couple of questions.
Come on, Sherry.
And again, thank you so much for doing this. Knowing just a little bit, since we talk occasionally, about this process and procedure, I'm so glad that you were willing to do this and to kind of share like behind the scenes and let us in on the pain, the lows, the highs, everything in between. But when you were when you go out to Goodwill or, whatever thrift stores, are you like literally taking a VHS and testing it there?
Sherry, I will tell you that I keep nitro gloves in my car in case I have to touch artifacts. So I have I have a clear click, which is what we use to digitize video. I connect that to the VCRs. I find an outlet in the Goodwill, and I actually run in a tape. I I have a Godzilla tape in my car that I use, and so if I can see Godzilla smashing things, I know this VCR is probably going to work. Also, you can hear audio, so if it sounds funky, it's probably funky. Now, if I was really organized, I wasn't an Eagle Scout. I was just a Boy Scout. I discovered other things as I was in that age. Um, I would have like a cassette cleaning tape so I could run through the heads first and then see if my Godzilla smashes. But since I'm time restricted, plug it in, put the clear click on. People think I'm insane, I'm sure. They're like, man, that guy really loves Godzilla. And I do. He smashes things. And he saves people after he smashes others.
Well,
Mothra.
there you go. I love the fact that yes, I carry archive gloves, and we should
You
do a
never,
poll. How many librarians carry archive gloves either in their car or purse or bag or something? I think
you
the
never
number
know when you're
is
gonna get into the funky stuff, you know?
right. Exactly. Exactly. My other question, we'll see if anybody else pops, but we've gotten a lot of really positive. Oh, our friend Brian Grubbs. Great job, Brent.
Thank you,
Um,
Grubbs.
Malcolm says, great presentation. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Mel.
Jill says, thank you. This was so interesting. Will the slides be shared later? It has been recorded and we will share the recording. Gypsy, thank you so much for this presentation. Great job.
Thank you.
I know Brent is a wonderful presenter and always is very informative. So I will not get distracted by all the other things, but that I could ask. I'll save those for later. But I did want to say, when you were talking about collaborating with museums, and I know that you have a relationship with the downtown public library.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, do you guys like have a regular formal meeting, or is this more of a casual? How do you interact with these organizations and groups? How do you work and play well in the sandbox?
It's a good question. So, we have quarterly meetings with the Regional History Organization Club. And so that's usually 30 organizations at a time there, sometimes 40 organizations. And we usually pick a site somewhere. And when I say like regional, it's like 2 hour circle. We pick a site that we can all move to and we can all visit. We kind of get a little tour in and then we all meet and talk about what's going on, issues. And then we're also members of the Digital Public Library of America. We're in the Heartland Hub, which is our hub. So that's another way that we connect with other archives and museums. And then we just have our like personal relationships as far as like our day-to-day needs. So my digital collection librarian deals a lot with the downtown library. I deal with the downtown library more on a casual basis. Usually like we just interact, since our catalogs are combined, we interact so much together already that there's no need to have something more formal set up. But then we're always inviting, so right now, another county, St. Charles County, the next county over, we're inviting their Heritage Museum to start interacting with us. And we're actually hosting some of the programming that they do so that we can kind of put that extended hand out there and welcome them in. Sorry for giving you flashbacks. Yeah, so I mean, moving is not fun. Moving personally, moving professionally, it's just not fun at all. And I'm happy that no one told me about it in the job interview. Because it happened 3 months after I accepted the position. I don't know if I would have said no, but I probably would have looked at it differently. But I just want to, I want to reiterate that like we're librarians, a lot of librarians are perfectionists. We live in a world of order, we take chaos and we put it in order. You have to accept that nothing's perfect. Things are going to happen. Do your best, and that's the way to live.
Hey, Brent, I have another question for my friend Christina in Romania. Do you have programs or projects with students in high schools and universities in order to teach them skills of recording family history?
So yes, we do. Not as much as I would like. So we do actually have field trips. We have educational experiences. We actually host summer camps where people can come in. We host interns from high school and from college, and we try to impart this knowledge. But if if I had more staff and more time, I personally would love to start teaching the kids how to get veterans on the Veterans History Project. That would be a huge thing for me personally. So, Library of Congress, National Archives in the United States has set up Veterans History Project where they're just compiling all of these veteran stories, and so that's a huge thing for me. And there's actually guidelines. It's actually one of the earliest ways that I got into doing oral history. I was a Boy Scout, and we recorded a local veteran. So I would love to do more. It's just we're talking people power. And right now, if remember seeing those numbers, we went from 9,000 to 45,000 in 5 months. We're waiting for that initial surge of traffic to die down if it's going to, and that's when we can do more outreach. But yeah, I we do, but not to my satisfactory level.
Excellent. Lots of, oh, our friend Katie Smith.
I'm so glad
Uh,
all my Missouri people came out to support me. Y'all
Woo!
the best.
Yeah, Missouri is fabulous, of course. All right. Oh, and hi, Ramona. So there's lots of friends coming to support you, Brent. Thank you again so much. I'm going to say if there's no more questions or comments, again, Brent is so kind as to put his contact information out here. Hopefully, if you have any questions about family search, you're welcome to reach out to me, and I am happy to get some answers for you. Yes, he is a non-sponsored or paid for, but he is a friend of Family Search.
All the time.
And
When Sherry says you can always reach out to her about family search, I seriously and actually I will reveal a secret. I always just reach out to her regarding anything at family search now. She's my main point of contact. And I even tell her this. I'm like, I know I could probably find someone else, but I trust you more to answer my questions or get them answered. And she will direct me to
oh,
my place.
well, thanks. I try. I do what I do what I can. Um, but please be aware that there's so many wonderful ideas and creative and incredible librarians. Librarians are the best. Come on, let's be real. Librarians are the best. So as a community, please feel free to reach out. Oh, hi, Byron. Glad you could make it too. So again, as a community, let's work together. And if you have any questions, please reach out. If and well, this was recorded, so feel free to share with others that may. I know we had someone early on email me saying that she had trouble getting in at first, so there will be a recording. Feel free to share it with your leadership or your staff, or it's Friday night, you need another video to watch sometime, there you go. But I hope thank you all for coming and participating in this IFLA webinar. If you would like to know more about the International Federation of Library Association, please reach out to me as well. I should have started with I am the chair of the local history and genealogy for IFLA. And so I'm happy to answer any questions of that as well. But if not, I hope you all have a great day. And Brent, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you in about 4 weeks at RootsTech.
Yep.
Bye.
Everybody join me. Have a great one.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.